might as well. I thought maybe there'd be a few more people, but I don't see anybody coming. Okay, good. I'm Betsy Diachun, and this summer we were going to have the lay people do one service each, and we've had 2 so far, and this will be the 3rd one. And I decided to do it on a paper that I can't exactly remember everything about it, but I think we had an adult Sunday school here for a while, and we all wrote a paper on what we believed. Does anybody else remember that? I can just remember, Gary, there's water there. Yes, please help yourself. So I'm just going to repeat that to you, and I'd like it to be an interactive service so that if other people would like to discuss what they believed afterwards, or if you come to something that you really feel you want to say right then, please, raise your hand and I'll be glad to interrupt and stuff. So for our good morning, the opening words this morning, and I even checked to see if Patty was around because I really like to have music, but she has in the summertime is going to some other churches to make some extra pin money so that she isn't right around. And these are our opening words for today. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its visions change your heart. And I want to welcome you all here. And as I say, I hope you will think about participating. Peter, will you do the chalice lighting or someone? You know what? I don't even know if there are matches up there. I didn't look. I looked once and then I forgot.
There was 1 match left.
There's 1 match left. Okay, let's see how lucky Peter is. Ooh. All right. Thank you. Okay. So with the chalice lighting, we should have the words. They're in your order, the program. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Now, each week, we wish to share our joys and sorrows, because if you have a joy, it seems bigger when lots of people can appreciate it. And if you have a sorrow, it lessens a little bit the more people that are involved. So is there anyone here who has anyone they would like to say today or express a joy? Yes.
So this is a sorrow. I was listening to the Al Franken podcast today, and he had Julia Lithwick on, and they spent the entire time talking about the ramifications of this last Supreme Court. And it is frightening, and I am afraid for what's going to happen in our country in the next couple of years.
Is there anybody else? Anybody online or anything that would like to get their 2 cents in? Okay, that certainly is worthy of thinking about and to try to do something about. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if it's just because I'm too old or what, but I think, it's like we went through this once and now we're just going to go through it again. I don't. Okay. So my paper which is entitled This I Believe. I'll read it, and then, as I said, I would like some input from you people of anything that you believe or you think is apropos. I was raised in a Protestant family, Methodist to be exact. My parents were fairly active in the church. I was the youngest of 7 children, and my brothers and sister, who had participated in church activities, were grown and living away from home by the time I was a teenager. It is interesting to note that they are all active in their respective churches, although most of them are not Methodists, and none of the other ones are Unitarian Universalists. I think they are all registered Republicans, except that has changed since I wrote the paper, now that I think about it. And some of them I know even voted for Obama on his first run at the election. I remember once as a teenager, when I was walking home from school, I met my mom, also walking home. With 7 children, she never had a car around to drive because somebody was always using it. Anyway, after something I had heard at school, I exclaimed to her that I couldn't imagine being Catholic and having to eat fish every Friday, as was the church, one of the church rules at that time. My mom very calmly said, if you had been born Catholic, you would eat fish on Fridays. And I realized that she was right. We usually follow the path of least resistance and follow the religion or non-religion of our parents. As a child and as a teenager, there were definitely times in my life when I prayed to God to change the natural order of the universe. Many of you have heard the story about when curiosity caused me to get into a great deal of trouble in a large hotel. I distinctly remember holding on to a Bible and asking God to make it 5 minutes ago. At times, I also tried to bargain with God. I would vow to be good if he, never a she at that time, would take temptation away. I always ended up on the losing end. I was not introduced to Unitarianism until I was a sophomore in college. My mother came to visit me at college for Mother's Weekend in the spring after I had discovered Unitarianism. I couldn't wait to take her to a church service. The minister that Sunday preached basically about other Protestant churches that they all are talking the talk, but not walking the walk. The minister expressed his feeling that they did not do enough social action to carry out the will of Jesus. With my mother sitting next to me, I was a bit embarrassed. Afterwards, I remember my mom telling me that she thought he was too hard on the other churches, that there were great many good things being accomplished by them. Some months later, I married Pete Morrow in that same Unitarian Universalist church. Our parents and some siblings were present at the small ceremony. One of my aunts had written to my father and that it was as bad as getting married in a Jewish synagogue. And I remember wondering at the time, what would be wrong with that? This all occurred in the mid 1950s when racial tensions were high. People on campus were breaking away from fraternal organizations because they were not admitting Black people. The seeds for social action and democratic treatment were sown deeply in my mind at that time. So there I was, a young adult, introduced to a religion which places more emphasis on service than on ritual. I was hooked. From then on, I have called myself an agnostic humanist, an agnostic humanist. I don't have enough faith to say that there is a God, nor do I have enough faith to say there is no God. I waffle, although I have completely given up on the idea of a personal God. I do believe in humankind and our ability to better ourselves and to help each other. This means that being a UU allows me to practice my religion 24/7. I don't worry about life after death. In fact, as a youngster, I was terrified of the thought of living forever and ever. The Christian concept of a personal God in heaven and a devil in hell seems nonsensical to me and completely different from anything else we have seen in our life. This is the life about which I am concerned. It is the life I wish to improve. If I live where everyone tries to get along with other people and there is peace and beauty, it is because I want to live in a place where everyone tries to get along with other people and there is peace and beauty. I believe one lives after death in the memories of the people whose lives she or he have touched. Nevertheless, I have a need for church. When I express feelings of what I believe out of this congregation, they just can't understand why we go to church. It doesn't mean anything to you. And it's very difficult to explain sometimes, especially to our young grandchildren, why we feel that it is important to have a church and go to church. Religion and Sunday services were a part of my childhood, and I still believe in their importance, at least to me. I feel more comfortable with my week if I attend a Sunday service. Thus, I'm inclined to attend one even when I'm out of town. I gathered great strength just from singing the one line in the Spirit of Life, which I just love, which goes, "Roots hold me close, wings set me free." And it's what this church does for me. Am I a Christian? I would not identify myself that way, even though I follow the principles of Jesus as I understand them. But that's not important to me any more than life after death is. So how do I carry my belief into action? I attend and try to support all the services and activities in our church to the best of my ability, because I feel that this church is closer to the truth as I see it than any other. I am not shy about telling people I am a Unitarian Universalist. I am also active in many nonprofit social action agencies, trying to put my religious beliefs into effect. I came from a big family, and I consider this congregation to be my extended family. It is important to me to be proud of organizations and agencies with which I'm associated, and I am proud of all of you. So what I thought was maybe we could kick off a discussion about what people believe. And maybe at this stage in your life, you don't even think about it anymore, what you believe and what you don't believe. But if you can give me some idea, I just thought it might be interesting for us all to get involved. Do I have any takers? We have a microphone up here. So even if you lost your voice, you can still say something.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm kind of in the same place you are, Betsy. I grew up Catholic, and I tried really hard to totally immerse myself in it. It scared me to death. The nuns scared me. The statues with people's hearts hanging out scared me. It all scared me. I was just like, terrified most of the time. Confession scared me. When I was 12, I went to confirmation. My grandmother gave me this Bible, and I was a reader. I spent the whole summer reading this Bible, cover to cover. It was, I thought, did people have anybody ever actually read this thing? It was just a lot of really strange stuff, stories that made no sense, and some stuff that I thought was inappropriate. So it just was it was hard for me. And then eventually I just had to walk away from it. And if I go to most Protestant churches, it still kind of scares me. Communion makes me uncomfortable. The body and blood stuff makes me uncomfortable. Here we do, the Reverend said that the other day, we do community instead of communion. And it's the joys and sorrows that replaces our having to eat wafers at St. So this is just so much more comfortable. And I consider myself a Christian because the thing that I got out of being a Catholic was Christ of his good work. Because that's what it really means to me. This hanging stuff on the cross and all that just freaks me. But feeding the poor, feeding the hungry, taking care of lepers, which to me is sort of like people who had AIDS in our generation, taking care of these people, caring about people. That's to me what a Christian is. So I consider myself a Christian because I try to follow those acts which are humanistic. And so that's kind of where I am. And I don't, this heaven and hell stuff I think is silly. So, and I don't think there was really an arc. And I don't think, I mean, I think these stories that were made were to teach people lessons. And now people don't get the lesson. They're too busy looking to see if they can find the arc, but they don't get the lesson that was being taught. So that's kind of where I am.
I think yeah, that's a good way to put it. It doesn't really matter. I feel that churches are necessary even for a country to have as a place that people will think of as being good for other people without all the frill and maybe they don't believe everything in it. But I certainly feel that we have to have churches and religion in order to I don't know why people should have to keep should have to have those things to be remain good, let's say. But somehow that we seem to need that. Thank you.
I think the purpose of religion is to make us sit down in community and consider a weighty topic. Because most people don't do that in their individual lives. They're so busy accumulating, working, thinking about the next thing, that very few people sit down and think about what's right, what's moral, try to look at both sides of an issue. And I think that's one of the things that I gained from coming here. I actually had somebody who worked for me once who was a Catholic, and I'm a former Catholic. And she just started asking me about my religion. And when I told her that, you know, you didn't have to believe in God to be a Unitarian Universalist, she just looked at me and she said, well, you're one of the people who seems to do the right thing all the time. What is your motivation? If you don't believe in heaven and going to heaven, why do you bother trying to do the right thing? And I just kind of said, oh, it's a very sad world if you need that to be able to do the right thing. But I think that's how a lot of people think. It's this reward punishment thing instead of sitting down and thinking as Christ would say. I think most Christians aren't truly Christian because, you know, they don't think about what they say or do, how it might hurt the other person, and put themselves in that situation where you say, would I like somebody to say or do this to me? And if the answer is no, then why am I doing it? You know? So that's kind of what my belief system is just trying to be kind to other people and to think about difficult questions and situations.
One time, the one of our members was meeting with the religious editor for the Gazette. It's when the Gazette had a larger staff. And he said to her something to the effect of, why don't you come and see us and see what we're like? And she said, well, who do you condemn? And he said, well, we don't condemn anyone. And she said, oh, well, that's what religions do. Every religious has to condemn some kind of a person or something. And we were just all shocked. Absolutely. She never did come to talk to us either, I don't think. So she didn't quite get the picture, I guess. How about somebody else? He has to do it because he promised me.
I think that some of the point that Betsy made is absolutely right on about how important your early childhood exposure to religion or church is. And I'm guessing, I've never seen a statistic, but I bet you that 99.9% of the people choose that say the church that was the one they were raised in. That's where most people get their choice of a church. And that's understandable, I guess. But I think from my point of view, I did the same thing. I wasn't raised really in a church. Well, we did get affiliated with a church because my folks thought that they owed the church, a particular church in town, a return because they sponsored a scout troop that we participated in and so forth. But my father was a scientist and a rational thinker, and my mother kind of went along with that, I guess. And I followed the line that my friends all followed as a child, where I just sort of clung to the idea that there's a higher and personal God that's out there. I don't know where I even seized on that understanding, but I followed it. But when I got a little older, I just realized that that's just a childish thought. You know, there's no evidence whatsoever, if you're a rational thinker, to suggest that there's really any genuine possibility there even is a God. And so I don't like to answer the question when people say, do you believe in God? I prefer to answer it, I just don't believe there is a God. There's no evidence, no rationalization that there's ever been anybody that can offer a genuine piece of evidence that there's any God. We've only been looking for it for thousands of years. Wouldn't there some evidence come up? I mean, hard evidence that can be reproduced and follow the rigors of a rational thinker. It's not a problem. I think it's wholesome not to believe in God if there isn't a God. I'm not malicious about it, but I do get kind of tired sometimes about people just babbling on about God and this sort of thing. And their reliance on the Bible is, to me, just an indication, a clear indication that they've never studied it, because the Bible is a horrible book. It's got awful stories in it, and it portrays in so many words an awful, angry, vengeful God who will murder people at a lot faster pace and more determination than Adolf Hitler ever thought of doing, wiping out whole cities and towns because they didn't agree with the other people, not only their cities and their towns, but every animal, every single person in the town. I mean, this just went on and on. That's what the stories were. Well, I just can't really believe that people have studied the Bible and want to believe that crap. But if they do, I guess that's their privilege.
But sometimes people want to believe in something, and they sort of feel that this is the only way they can go, type of thing. Whether it's true or not, I'm just saying that
Yeah, that's
that
true.
could happen.
I think you're right. Anybody else?
Yeah, if the Bible, I think, is universally accepted by Christians, then there's a lot of pressure. Well, that's my reality. So they did lock barrel, I think. The good parts and the bad parts. I'm halfway through a book, 600-page book. It's Pope Pius XII in World War II. And it's written by a guy who previously wrote a book about the Pope and Mussolini. Pius XI, the predecessor to Pope Pius XII, kind of came up with Mussolini's rise to power in Italy, starting about 1922 and 23, so early on. And his first book, I don't know if it was his first book, but his name's Kirchner. His first book on the popes, he details how the Catholic Church and the fascist movement in Italy, they were locked arm and lockstep, hand in hand. They perpetrated it together. One probably couldn't have done it without the other. So a couple of years ago, they opened up the Vatican archives, because there's always been a big debate about Pius XII's role in World War II, or lack of role possibly, and also his silence, if not complicity, in the Holocaust. There's been a big debate about that. So 2 years ago, they opened up the Vatican archives on Pius XII, and it's worse than you ever imagined. It was always thought piecemeal that he knew about the mass deportations early on, around 1940. He knew about the mass shootings as early as 41, and he knew about the gas chambers probably 42 or 43. And now the evidence is coming out that he got numerous reports from priests out in the field, from diplomats, from military, about the incredible crimes of the Nazis. And he remained silent through most all of it. And all the Vatican newspapers played up the Great Germany and the Führer, and it's stunning. And he got entreaties, appeals from all over the world, including the United States. Please speak out against the atrocities. Please say or do something. But he remained silent publicly and privately. He had, and it's all documented because all the cardinals, archbishops, bishops who surrounded him all took notes after they had met with the Pope. And they all detailed his enthusiasm. And so it's all coming out now if you care to read about it and look at this history. But I think I was brought up Catholic as well. And I think probably just got away from it in my 20s and 30s. And it was really when I got involved in women's health issues. And I recognized at that point that the main drawback to progress with women's health is the Catholic Church. And to this day, they were instrumental in getting this majority on the Supreme Court that has overturned Roe, and it will probably remain hostile to women's rights for the next 20 to 30 years. Other than that, I really subscribe to, luckily late in life, I've realized that, or at least I've come to the realization that I don't know the answers and I'm never going to know the answers. And it's as simple as that. When you have quantum mechanics, you have spooky behavior where particles beyond the speed of light can communicate with each other. To my mind, all bets are off. So when I talk about these things with my wife, she's like, oh, there's an afterlife, and, we're going to be there with our cats and all our friends, and it's going to be great. But we have to cross over. And, I used to just dismiss it. But now, who knows? It could happen. If all bets are off with quantum physics, we don't really know anything about the other side. So, so that's where I'm coming from at this point in my life.
What really to say? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
My name's Meg. I wasn't brought up in a Christian home, but we did go to, maybe you could say I was. We just went to church on holidays, like Easter and Christmas time, but I really didn't understand what that was all about. And we didn't really talk about God much. My mother was a single mother. She was just doing the best she could with what she could then. I think I kind of gradually got to know a higher power on my own. And I've read various different, literature, and that's what drew me to Unitarianism. Like that, there wasn't any just one doctrine, that they incorporate all the doctrines. I can't consider myself a Christian because I just don't believe that Jesus Christ is it can't say that Jesus Christ is it's the only God, because how can so many other people in the world be wrong? As far as my conception of a higher power, I don't know, like I'm of a science background, but I'd like to believe that there's something greater than myself out there. I have to say, I feel closest to that higher power when I'm in nature. Like the other day, I was doing some reading about, it was in the AA Big Book, and they were talking about agnostics. And, I looked out at the tree and I said, God, are you there? Is there really a God out there or not? And then I felt this strong wind actually come in through the window, So I'm saying, okay. I think, you know, because my prayers are always those foxhole prayers, like when I got into really bad trouble, like, God, please help me out of this, you know. I think I pray now, just really hoping that there's some sort of a higher power so that I have a source of strength. And, you know, I want to do the next right thing. And I do believe in karma because I know that a lot of the bad karma I've put back out there has come back to me. But I love the idea of Unitarianism being service being one of its cornerstones. That's the same thing as they talk about in the 12-step fellowships, service and unity with each other. So for me, churches serve to learn how to be kind to each other because I can't commune all the time all by myself. You know, I feel like there's a higher power when I'm with other people, like within a church setting or other settings, not always by myself. So I'm definitely open-minded. That's something that's important. I don't think I'll ever know all the answers, but I'm willing to keep listening and keep learning.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I guess everybody has a story. I have a story too. My wife looks skyward thinking, oh God, what now? Um, yeah. I was raised in a Presbyterian home. We'd go to church most Sundays. I don't think that there was a lot of seriousness about the church really, but there was seriousness about going to church on Sundays. But after a time, it was kind of funny. A friend of my mother's came to visit, and she was from Syracuse and attended May Memorial in Syracuse and said, gee, why don't we go to Unitarian Church? So they went out to the Amherst Church and took in the service. And my mother came back from this experience and she said, gee, you know, you ought to go out there. They have a lot of people like you out there. So, well, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. And I guess it worked out okay because I met my wife there and a lot of good came out of being there. I think it truly was a spiritual awakening, but it was hard for me in a way to switch churches because the whole Protestant Christian mystique thing hung heavy over me in the beginning when I started going to UU Church. That I sort of wondered, you know, somehow if I were betraying some force that I wasn't true to whatever heritage I was raised in. This force, whatever force that the old religion had, and so I got over that. And I feel I identify as Christian now. I've had profound spiritual experiences, which Patty's probably scared to death I might try to go into in detail. So for the benefit of all, I won't. But suffice it to say, I carry my own Christianity. It is tailored to my own interpretation. It is not I figure if everybody else could build their own version of Christianity, the Methodists and the Presbyterians and God knows how many others, that I can do the same thing. And it can be to me whatever I choose it to be, just as all the other branches of Christianity have chosen for themselves. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But so I'm a UU Christian, but at the same time, I understand that that most of the people in UU Church have not had experiences of the kind I've had. And, you know, we're devoted to reason here. And if something doesn't seem reasonable to you, then why should you subscribe to it? So I fully understand if somebody says, well, I'm an atheist or I'm an agnostic or I'm whatever, you know, it's like, fine, you know, that's cool. I mean, that jives with your experience. What I believe and feel jives with mine. So fine. Have a nice day. So that's pretty much where I'm at with spirituality. But it's been a good ride. This denomination is a very good one. I think the way that it holds basic decency and human values in such high esteem universally across all the churches in the denomination. It's amazing the uniformity in the denomination. It's a wonderful thing. It's a force for good. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you.
Just because you brought it up, I'm sorry. Kate. We used to have a very active member that everybody will know that's here from the old days was Helen Pop. And her parents were among the founders of this church. And so it has gotten so Peter and I frequently go to Unitarian churches when we're out of town. One reason we do is because we have some grandchildren who are Catholic, and they just make that such a big thing. Well, they have to go to church because they're Catholic. So now we just say, well, we have to go to church because we're Unitarian, because they're, I mean, it really is just me being nasty. But with the reason I brought up Helen Pop is because my mind is just gone. I don't even know what I was going to say. I'm sorry. I can't, it was something, I'll be damned. It probably had to do with, my mind is gone. I don't know. Yeah. Some year.
This isn't going to that's brought it up. We have a relic in this church, and it's called the Helen Pop tool. Does everybody know what the Helen Pop tool is? Well, it's a wonderful tool, and you'll find one down in the kitchen. It's a little plastic gizmo. It cost about $0.25, I think, when in the day at least. And it'll let you scrape off things off of the dish that you just can't get off any other way. And Helen used to
It's just a
promote
little
these
flat
things.
piece of
She'd give you
plastic.
one, she'd supply them to anybody that wanted them, and had a source of them. I don't know where she got them, somewhere in Wisconsin or something or other. And we dubbed them the Helen Pop tool, and no home is really complete without one, tell you that.
Oh, I know what I was going to say too was, so when Peter and I go to these just different churches, we'll look around at the people there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Finish your thought.
Oh, you can hear me. We'll look around at people there and we'll go, oh, there's Helen Pop, or there's Bill Lisk. And just by what they're doing, every single church has, it seems as if they all have somebody that is similar to the ones that we have in our church too. Not that all churches may, I mean, but just, it just seems like it. Sometimes it's very similar to what? No, I just mean, we go to this church elsewhere sometimes, at different churches, and we just look at somebody who's busy doing all the things, and we'll just say, oh, that's the Helen Pop of their church. I don't know who it is. Or somebody might be fussing with the electrical, and we'll say, oh, well, that's the Bill Lisk of their church, sort of thing. That's all that I meant by it. Yeah.
I find the idea of a higher power to be quite comforting, and I suspect that mankind.
I don't think it's
I find the idea of a higher power comforting, and I suspect
hasn't mankind felt that way for thousands of years? I mean, the invention of ancient gods and so on. I was raised Episcopal with the beautiful words of the Book of Common Prayer, which I still find very comforting. And I go to church to hear and repeat those words, but I don't believe in the resurrection. And I agree with Patty that some of it is kind of gruesome. But I also, as somebody has said, appreciate that hour of the week to think about goodness and to be in community with others who for just that one short time are supposedly thinking about the greater good or what we should mean to each other. And as Betsy said, I take from Jesus what I feel was his essential message, which is goodness and kindness. Unfortunately, I've been exposed here to a great deal of evangelical or Christianity, I guess you would say, which is scolding and warning about hell and so on, and kind of neglecting the fact that I think Jesus's central message was kindness and healing. I kind of mourn, and it still surprises me, the really disappearance of mainstream Christianity. When I was growing up, every town was centered around the little green with the churches on it. And there was such a sense of community within our churches. And those churches, mainstream churches now, don't provide that same kind of community anymore. People are home on their screens, and women are working, so they don't have time to take Sunday morning off and go to church. And for whatever reasons, I think we have lost something in losing the better parts of mainstream church, which I think did help us to think about goodness.
Anyone else?
I'm going to add one last thing for myself. The first time I went to a Unitarian church, it was on a Sunday. My son was down in Florida visiting his dad, and I had the sudden urge to go to church, which I hadn't had that urge in a long time. So I got dressed up in a suit, and I went to the Amherst Church, and I sat in the lot to see what does this look like, because I wasn't quite sure. So I went in, and some people were dressed up like I was. Some people were in their jeans. It was this feeling of comfort. And the minister was all dressed up in these robes, which I found out he only wears 3 times a year. But so it's Easter Sunday, the day of the resurrection. And the minister, Carl Titchener, which a lot of people know, Carl Titchener gave the sermon, and he said, I have a lot of friends who are priests and ministers. He said, none of us believe there's a poker game in the sky. And he said, if you want to have life after death, he said, leave good behind you when you go. And it's filled up my arms. And it's such a simple thought, but it's this is where our eternity is, if we leave something good behind us, and I just thought that was wonderful. And that's what made me become a Unitarian, with that short talk.
Joan, Susan? Nothing. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're going to end up early then today. I don't know what's happening next week. Erica, do you? I don't know who's in charge.
There just might be a video.
There might be a video next week. Okay.
It seems as though the probability of getting hired by the sex. I see. Okay.
So nobody is putting out an answer to a call for. Okay. Maybe
we have nothing to say.
How could that be?
We're Unitarian.
It is interesting, the feeling that I have of how, like you just said, you look forward to going to church and to having it behind you, but as a child, and it's still to a little bit inside me now, is a feeling of fear that maybe because it was so much bigger than I was or something. I don't know what brought it on. Nothing that anybody said or anything, but just a fear of thinking about living forever and ever and to go on and maybe I didn't think I could be good that long. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was that. Are there any other announcements for today? For the good of the group? Or anything? The closing then will be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. Thank you. And I just can't get up that easily. If you'll extinguish the chalice and we can say together from the bottom of your program. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, or the words of community, or the fire of commitment. Theirs we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for participating.